Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the InduSoft webinar, Stump the Expert. My name is Fabio Terezinho. I'll be your host today, and thank you very much for attending the webinar during the holiday season. And the agenda for this webinar is different from all other webinars because it's pretty much open. You can post your questions on the WebEx bar on the top of your monitor. You can use the Q&A box or the chat box. Post any questions about how to implement something or if we can provide any functionality. And I will address your specific questions one by one during the period of the webinar up to 1 hour. So take this opportunity to ask any questions you want, to get information, demonstrations, and tutorials about any interface you may want to create within the InduSoft Web Studio. Just before we get into the questions, I want to thank each and all of you for all your business over the years, especially during this year, which is about to finish 2017, has been an excellent year for InduSoft. Thanks to you, to our customers, to our partners. We have grown more than ever this year. We are reinvesting into the business, hiring new engineers, new developers, and providing always a better and better service to you. Not only evolving the product faster than ever, but also continue providing technical support, even free of charge, which is unique for our industry. So thank you for the great results on this year. Thank you for your partnership, and look forward to continue growing with you in 2018 as well. So with that, I'll go to the first questions here. So first one is demonstrate how InduSoft can save data to a database. Sure, so one of the key features in InduSoft Web Studio is the ability to save data to any SQL relational database. Could be SQL Server, could be Sybase, could be MySQL, SQL Azure, could be a simple MDB file or ACCDB file locally or remotely as well. So from InduSoft Web Studio, I believe I'm still in pause mode. Let me just change it. There you go. So I'm going to use SQL Server in this example, but it could be any database. And I'm going to create a new database here called, for instance, Webinar. Then I'm going to run InduSoft Web Studio, the development environment. I'm using version 8.1, but the database interface is available in many previous versions of InduSoft as well. We even have a patent for the technology that we use to save and retrieve data from databases from any platforms, even from Linux with our IoT View product. So I'll create a new project here, Webinar, for example. And now InduSoft has three main tasks that allows you to save and retrieve data from databases: trend, alarm, and events. So let's start with trends. I will come here to tasks, trend, insert a trend worksheet with tags like pressure and level. And I say I want to save for now in the proprietary format, and I want to save every second. So this is a test worksheet. So here in tasks, I have the trend background task that is actually saving data to the history. And then in graphics, I can create a screen. And create an interface here, a trend object, a graphical object to actually display the information. So I create here exit with the function shutdown. There we go. Now here in graphics, I create the trend control. And on this trend control, I'm going to create a pressure and a level pens. Just create them here. This one will be blue. This one will be red, for example. Save it. Give a name to the screen like the main screen. Right click here. Set as a startup. And run the application. So I see the values for pressure and for level. In order to simulate the values, I'll create some slides on the screen so I can simulate the values. I'll go to graphics, symbols, and I'll bring here sliders like this one. One to simulate. I'll use the label pressure, and I'll link it to the tag pressure. And the other one, we have the label level. And if I do not want to type the tag name, I can always browse here, level. So I link it to the tag level. We have online configuration, so I can save it and the runtime takes the changes on the fly. And now I can use those slides to change the tag values. And as you see, they change here in the trend control. Now, if I hit exit to shut down the application, it shuts down the whole runtime. And if I start the runtime again, it retrieves the history data from the proprietary history files. So far, I'm not saving to the database. I'm saving to the proprietary files. But in the meantime, let's go to tasks, and here in alarms, create an alarm interface as well. So I say, for instance, when pressure is higher than 80, I want to show the message, pressure too high. And when level is lower than 20, I want to show level too low. And I want to save it when the alarm becomes active, when it's acknowledged, and when it's normalized. The description, I just write test. I defined my alarms. Now on the screen, I can create objects to display the online alarms and the history of alarms. So here in graphics, I can go to alarm event control, create an object here, and leave it as alarm online. Then I can create another one here and just change the type to alarm history. And I have two objects here, one showing online alarms, another one showing the history of alarms. I can save it. It's already working. If I normalize level, then it's normalized here. If I double click on level, then I can see the three states here on the history and nothing on the online. If I increase pressure beyond 80, then I have pressure too high. I can acknowledge by double clicking, and if I come down, I normalize. Sorry. So I have my online alarm and my history of alarms also saving data into the proprietary files. The third interface that natively saves data is the event logger. So if I come here to global, I can enable the event logger, and I can define what kind of actions I want to save. I can save, for instance, any security system actions, log on, log off, invalid attempt to log on with the wrong password, password expires, any security system events. I can enable tags as well. So whenever a particular tag changes of value, I save a particular message. And I have this option, which is quite useful, called custom messages. When you enable the option custom message, you can send messages to the event logger using a built-in function called send event. So I can create a button here, turn on motor. And when I click on this button, I set, for instance, motor equals to 1, and I send event, I send a message saying motor ABC is turned on. So every time I click on this button, I send this message to the event logger. Create the tag motor, and create another button here with the label turn off motor. And when I click here, I set the motor tag to 0 and change the message to the motor was turned off. Now, the object to display the events is the same alarm event control. Just make it a little bit smaller to fit the space I have available here. I can change the type to events to show only events. I can change the background here, for instance, to white, change the fonts to black, and go into columns and show the event time. I don't need the tag name and the message. Let me make the message column wider and the timestamp wider as well. Apply. Okay, so I have my event object. I can save it, and as I click here to turn the motor on, I see in this timestamp the motor was turned on, and on this timestamp the motor was turned off. So I can generate my events. So I have 3 history interfaces here: trend, alarm, and event. What if, and I'm saving all this data into the proprietary history files from InduSoft. What if I want to save this data into the database, into this SQL Server database called Webinar, where I have no tables, nothing here? All I have to do is link InduSoft to that database. So you come here to Project, Options, Default Database, have to stop the runtime, and I want to link to this database here, the local SQL Express in my computer. Could be a remote database. So again, Project, Options, Default Database, and then you can browse for the database type you want to use. You can use JET for Access and Excel files, or you can use SAP for OLEDB provider for SAP databases. For SQL Server, we use the OLEDB for SQL Server. Here you define the server and the alias for the SQL Server database you want to use, the type of authentication, and then you browse the database. In this case is Webinar. We test the connection, always a good sign when it says OK. You can say OK, OK. Now InduSoft is linked or has a default connection to that database. Then you can say save the alarms and the events to a database, not to the proprietary files. And you can go to tasks on the trend worksheet and say save and retrieve the trend data to the database, not to the proprietary files. And that's it. You don't have to change the tags, you don't have to change the screens, you don't have to write scripts. Everything else just works now. So if I change the tag values here, the TrendControl shows the values on the screen. If I acknowledge the alarms, normalize the alarms, generate the alarm history shows the history of alarms, and the event logger shows the events as I turn the motor on and off. If I exit the application, shut down the runtime completely, and run again, you see the TrendControl automatically retrieves the data from the database as well as the alarm history and the event history. And if I go to my database now and refresh the webinar database, InduSoft automatically created a table called Trend 001 for the first trend worksheet with the timestamp and the values for the tags pressure and level, alarm history, with all the information about the alarm history, when the alarm became active, acknowledged, normalized, the time, the computer, the username, and one for the event history with all the information about the events. When the event happened, the username, the computer, the message, everything is automatically saved here. So that's how you can easily change an InduSoft project to save and retrieve data from any SQL relational database. And one last tip, the connection string that is built here is the one that's pointing to a particular database. You can have a tag here between curly braces, a string tag between curly braces. This way, you can change the connection string programmatically. You can even create a setup screen where the user browses for the database, sets the database, so you can point your application to a particular database dynamically during the runtime. Quite useful for templates. Very well. We have, let's see other questions. Thank you for supporting. I want to know what would be the best practice to develop a single extend project in InduSoft by more than one developer. For example, one configure the screens interface, another configure the drivers and tags configuration, and so on. How do you recommend that? Thanks for the question. There are two ways. So one way is just pure discipline. So in InduSoft, everything that is in global is pretty much shared by all the tasks of the product. And everything that's in graphics, tasks, and communication are independent. So for instance, if you go to global tags, sorry, you can have all the tags that you use here, that you define here, are used across can be used across the screens, the tasks, and the communication. The security system affects the graphics, the tasks, and the communication. So everything that you configure here, if you're working with more than one developer and you want to use the standard product, you need to have the discipline to say, okay, if you create tags, use with this syntax, or let me know before you create the tags. So you synchronize the tags database, the classes, the security system, and the functions in the global procedure repository. Everything else pretty much is independent from each other. So one developer can create the screens, another one tasks, another one drivers, and so on. And the easiest way to merge those applications is you take one application as the reference, and then you come here to Home, Import Wizard, InduSoft Web Studio Database, hit Next. You select if you want to import the tags only or the whole application. If you select this option here, import the whole project, then it imports not only the tags, but the whole project, the screens, scripts, and so on. And on this first option here, you define what you want to do when the import wizard finds conflicts. Screens with the same name, tags with the same name. Either you keep the one on the original or you override it with the one that you are importing. And then you come here to browse, and you browse another application. So you can come here, I want to import this application into the local one. And as you hit next and finish, then we import all the screens, all the drivers, all the scripts from the application you selected in the browser into this application. So this is one method, and this method is available for any InduSoft Web Studio license. You just import a project developed by the engineer B into the project developed by the engineer A. And you can keep doing that as the two projects evolve. Another method is using what we call collaboration server. So InduSoft Web Studio provides an add-on called Collaboration Server that's based on Microsoft Team Foundation Server. So let me just show a slide about this capability. go here in what's new. Okay. Collaboration. There you go. So using this add-on, the collaboration server, in one computer in your network, you install the Microsoft Team Foundation Server 2010. So this is a product that you can purchase from Microsoft. There is even a cloud version server of Team Foundation Server. So you purchase this software from Microsoft, install in your computer in your network, or subscribe to the Team Foundation Server online. And in InduSoft Web Studio, when you install the product or repair the product, in the list of features, one of the options is the collaboration server. So you enable that checkbox to enable the collaboration server, and then InduSoft installs a plugin for the Team Foundation server. So in each engineering station, you install InduSoft Web Studio and a free component from Microsoft called Visual Studio Team Foundation Client. And by doing that, when you create projects, you actually point your project and save your project in the Team Foundation server. And several engineers can work on the same project at the same time. So in InduSoft, we incorporate the concept of check-in and check-out. So when one engineer is editing a screen, it automatically tells the Team Foundation server, this screen is checked in by the engineer A. So if the engineer B tries to edit the same screen, he receives a warning saying the engineer A is editing the screen. If you make changes, you might need to overwrite or ignore your changes because engineer A is making changes as well. As the engineer A saves the changes on the screen, they can check out the screen, and now this screen is available for other engineers to make changes. So the Team Foundation server provides collaboration for multiple engineers to work on the same project at the same time, and also provides revision control. It keeps a log of all the changes that each engineer performed at any time. Another tip here, if you Google for InduSoft webinar collaboration, there is a few videos here, at least this one, collaborative tools with InduSoft Web Studio, and it's a 1-hour webinar where we show how to use this tool in details. So how to create the projects, how to check in, how to check out. So it's a 1-hour webinar that describes in details how to use the collaboration tool from InduSoft Web Studio with Team Foundation Server, step by step. And by the way, this is an add-on. So each station running InduSoft Web Studio development environment needs to have the license updated to support the collaboration server. Only the development stations, the runtime stations, do not require any kind of add-on, any kind of special licensing. Okay. So hopefully it addressed your question. Next one. Let's just go up. What about using a single, what about using a signed number in this chart? Below 0, for instance. A signed number in this chart. I believe the chart you are talking about is the TrendControl. So if that's the case, by default, when you go to the TrendControl here in Axis, the Y scale is from 0 to 100. You can always change the default, let's say from -100 to 100. I will also change my sliders here so I can simulate the minimum from -100 to 100 on each one of those slides. So if I run the application, now the values can go below 0, as you see here. They can go from minus 100 to 100. And if each pen has a different range, you can, instead, the axis scale is the default one for all the pens. But when you go to points, if you leave the min scale and max scale in blank, it uses the default one from axis. But if you come here and customize, like for instance for level, you say I want to go from minus 50 to 100. And I'll change also the slide here for level from minus 50 to 100. So now pressure uses the default scale, minus 100 to 100, and the level goes from minus 50 to 100. So you can define any scale you want for each pen, including signed negative numbers. And hopefully it addresses your question. Will the TXRX driver be available for IoT View in the future? Yes, we are porting drivers to IoT View, which is our runtime for Linux, on demand. So nowadays we have the drivers Modbus TCP for ModTCP for the Modbus TCP protocol, Modbus for Modbus Serial, RTU or ASCII, ABTCP for Allen Bradley DF1 protocol for SLIC PLCs, PLC5s, some compact logics. We have the driver ABCIP for the Allen Bradley ControlLogix Ethernet IP CIP protocol for the ControlLogix PLCs. We have MQTT, so you can use IoT View as an MQTT publisher or MQTT subscriber or for a remote MQTT broker. And we are porting other drivers from Windows to Linux on demand. So TXRX is a driver that could be easily ported to IoT View on Linux. So if you ever have a project that requires the TXRX driver on Linux or any other driver on Linux, please contact us, let us know about the opportunity, and we can provide a feedback on when that particular driver can be available on Linux. So I'm fairly confident that there will be demand for TXRX on Linux pretty soon, and I'm also confident that this is a driver that could be ported to Linux in a very short period of time. Another question, how to detect when some alarms in a project get normalized? There are different ways of doing that. So if you want to know from a global point of view, let's put it this way, for alarm worksheet, you have here in advanced total alarms and total UNAC. So if you go here to total alarms, let's say total ALR, just created an integer tag here, total alarm for this group, save. And I will show here on the screen the value of this tag. Could be any name, I just decided to call total ALR. So let's acknowledge those alarms. Let me just come here, stop, and reset the tags database. Okay, so now I have one tag active, which is level too low. I can even acknowledge I still have one tag active, which is level too low. If I increase pressure, now I have pressure too high. I can acknowledge this alarm, I still have pressure too high. As this alarm goes off, is normalized, the number of total alarms goes to 1. And as level goes up, the total alarms goes to 0. So this tag tells you how many alarms you still have active in the application. If you want to know how many tags are not acknowledged, you can use the second field. So here on the alarm worksheet, under Advanced, you can also use total ANAC. This is to have a global view. If you want to know tag by tag, then, for instance, if I want to know the current status of the tag pressure, so there are tag fields that you can use. For example, if you want to know the status, you can use the tag name, pressure, dash greater than, ALR status. And if you want to know if the tag is acknowledged, you can use the field ACK. So say here, ACK. So save it. So let's play with pressure. So the status is 0 and ACK is 0. As pressure goes up, the status goes to 2, which means high alarm activated. If I normalize, then the status goes to 0, which means it's no longer in the alarm state, but the ACK remains in 1 until I acknowledge the alarm. Now the ACK goes to 0. So if I simulate the alarm again, the status goes to 2. Any value different from 0 means an alarm status, like 1 is high, high, 2 is high, 4 is low, 8 is low, low, and so on and so forth. And the ACK is 1, which means requires acknowledgement. If I acknowledge the alarm, the ACK goes to 0, and the status remains in 2 because the alarm is still on. The alarm condition is still true. As I normalize, the status goes to 0. So you can have a global count, or you can have a specific status per tag. And hopefully it addresses your question there. Let's look for more questions here. So one question, how to use the screens in SMA thin clients. So in InduSoft Web Studio, you can save the screens as HTML, and you can visualize those screens in a web browser. Any web browser that supports HTML, including Safari on iPads and iPhones, including Chrome on Android devices, or even on the PC with Chrome, with Internet Explorer 11, with Edge. So pretty much, I created my screen just like my application, just like a standalone screen application. Now all I have to do is click here, publish, and save all as HTML. It automatically enables the TCP/IP server module, which is required for remote thin clients. And here in graphics, under thin clients, I need to go to mobile access at least once to review the settings. And I can change global settings, like for instance, how often you want process values, tag values to be updated on the thin client. I'm going to change from 1 second, which is the default, to 100 milliseconds. Now, save it. It's going to enable the mobile access task. So if you come here to tasks, the mobile access task is enabled, and the TCP/IP server is enabled as well. And now I can run my project. And from a remote device where I have a web browser, like Chrome here, I can type the IP address of the computer, /IWS, the version of InduSoft Web Studio, and I can say screen, the name of the screen or group of screens that you want to use. And additionally, I use here guest user 1, which means log on automatically as the guest user. So I have my interface here on the web browser. In the current version of InduSoft, version 8.1, we support the TrendControl, We support Alarm Online. We support alarm history and trend history, saving data to databases. So I have my whole interface here on the web browser. I can change the size of the window, and everything scales automatically. And I can interact with this application, play with this application the same way I do locally. So I can trigger commands, I can visualize online in history data, everything from the web browser. So that's it. You pretty much just publish the screens as HTML and then configure the mobile access settings at least once. And in the remote thin client, you don't have to install anything. It's a plugin-free interface. You can take an iPad or an iPhone or an Android device out of the box, connect to the network, type the IP address of the server, IWS 8.1 if you're using the current version, and question mark, screen equals the name of the screen you want to use, and if you want to bypass the default username and password screen, and guest user equals 1, and it logons automatically as guest. If you remove this portion, it's going to ask you for username and password, and you can enter your own username and password before accessing the screen. So it's that simple, and all the default tools, zoom in, zoom out, is all available here. Auto-screen scaling. You can split the pens in multiple sections or see them on the same section. You can enable the virtual cursor, and as you move the mouse over the trend, you see the pen, the values for each pen on the cursor, and the legend, the label for each pen is here at the bottom. So it's that easy to convert a standalone application to an application available to thin clients. Additional questions? There are plans to develop an InduSoft Web Studio application for Android or iOS devices to allow access to mobile access interfaces without need to use a web browser. Great question. The answer is absolutely yes. We plan to release it as early as Q1 of next year. Pretty much is the same functionality that you have in a web browser, but the app will encapsulate the web browser. So just run the app, go to settings, define the information you would set in the URL, the default user, the IP address of the server, the startup screen, and then when you switch to run mode, the app connects to the runtime and shows the screen in full screen mode. The same way you would see on a web browser. The content is the same one you would see in a web browser, but it's a native app for InduSoft Web Studio. And eventually, the app will provide additional functionalities like remote notifications, just like you use with instant messaging, also a type of chat between users sharing the same application with the same project, new functionality that will come with the app. But very, very soon, we'll release apps at least for iOS on Apple and Androids for Google, and possibly on Microsoft as well, to consume SMA thin clients as native apps, not only with a web browser. But again, the content that you see in the app is the same content that you can visualize today in a web browser. Very good question. Let's see. And by the way, everything that we do in InduSoft, the apps and everything else, is compatible with applications built on the past, right? So we have this commitment to keep 100% of compatibility, so you do not lose the investments you apply when you create applications with InduSoft Web Studio. So you can take applications built in previous versions of the product 10 years ago and just save them as HTML and visualize them in a web browser or in the upcoming apps. So we always evolve the technology in the product, but keeping compatibility with whatever you built on the past. So you protect the investment you made when you created objects, symbols, whole projects with InduSoft Web Studio. And at this point, we covered all the questions. Yep, I think we covered them all. So with that, I just want to finish with a great big thank you to all of you again for attending the webinar today, for being a partner and customers for InduSoft during 2017. Our success is your success as well. Was the best year for InduSoft in the whole history of the company, and we expect to have an even better year in 2018. Thanks to you, thanks to your support, and also the goal is to continue growing with you, with our partners, with our customers. So have a great holiday season. Thank you all for your support, and look forward to working with you in